And the Indiana Fever have pulled off the upset, the 6th seed, beating Vegas 89-73 to take Game 1.
Everyone counted the Indiana Fever out before the series even began. ESPN's analysts dismissed them, oddsmakers mocked the idea of them competing, and even the defending two-time champions, the Las Vegas Aces, were confident they would cruise to a sweep. But on the very night Aya Wilson was presented with her MVP award in front of a roaring home crowd, Indiana delivered a stunning shock to the basketball world by stealing Game 1. A team missing 6 players somehow flipped the entire playoff script with just one win. And then Caitlin Clark, watching from the sidelines, shared a post-game message with her teammates that has everyone talking. This wasn't just an upset, it was a declaration of intent. If you're riding with the Fever, drop a comment saying, "Fired up," and let the world know how proud you are of this squad. What happens when a team enters the playoffs missing 6 players, written off by every sports analyst, and staring down the reigning champions? You get the Indiana Fever's greatest test of belief, a night scripted for someone else's celebration but stolen by them instead. This was Aces vs Fever, Game 1, and while nobody thought Indiana would control the outcome, they proved otherwise. Analysts everywhere assumed the result was inevitable. "They're not going to lose on MVP night," one confidently said about the Aces. "There's no way." That certainty only set the stage for the shock that followed. From the beginning, the series was framed as hopelessly lopsided. ESPN panels called it short and predictable. Sportsbooks had odds so tilted that betting on the Aces' margin of victory made more sense than wagering on an Indiana upset. Even the language leading into the matchup carried no hope for the Fever. Headlines spoke of surviving, not winning. Las Vegas was painted as the powerhouse charging toward another championship, while Indiana was portrayed as little more than an obstacle to be brushed aside. The expectation wasn't for them to succeed, but to avoid embarrassment. By all logic, the Fever had no business being in this position. They weren't supposed to be advancing to the semifinals for the first time in nearly a decade. And yet, here they were, knocking out the Atlanta Dream on their home court, without Caitlin Clark, without Sophie Cunningham, without Sydney Colson, without Ari McDonald, and without Chloe Bibby. That long list of injuries left them looking more like a hospital ward than a playoff roster, but somehow, Indiana had clawed their way through. Caitlin Clark herself, though sidelined, became a beacon for her team. Wearing her black Air Force Ones, she held one shoe up like a signal of resilience, symbolizing their fight. Meanwhile, Stephanie White's coaching brilliance showed through. She had to work with a 9-player rotation, and shockingly, 5 of those players hadn't even touched the floor in Indiana's last matchup against Atlanta during the regular season. 3 weren't even part of the roster back then. By all accounts, the Fever should not have been here. Yet, they were still standing, scrappy, resilient, and relentless. Now picture the atmosphere in Las Vegas before tip-off. Championship banners hung proudly overhead. The crowd buzzed with anticipation of another step toward a three-peat. And then, the centerpiece of the night unfolded, Aya Wilson, standing at center court, hoisting her MVP trophy high. The moment was more than a personal honor, it was the narrative everyone expected. Vegas was the powerhouse. Indiana was the backdrop. The Fever weren't just overlooked, they were invisible, background characters in what was supposed to be Wilson's coronation. But sports have a way of tearing up the script. Think of all the great underdog runs in history, the teams written off before a ball was even tipped. That same energy was in the air. This wasn't merely the beginning of a series, it was Indiana's chance to announce themselves on the national stage. By the final buzzer, everything had shifted. What was meant to be Wilson's night was stolen. Indiana walked out of Las Vegas with a stunning 89-73 victory, their first semifinal win in nearly 10 years, leaving the entire basketball world stunned. And the shock didn't just come from the Fever's collective fight. It came from one player who transformed the night into her personal showcase, Kelsey Mitchell. While the spotlight was fixed on Wilson's MVP celebration, nobody anticipated what Mitchell was about to unleash. The night was scripted for the Aces, the defending champions protecting their home floor. But Mitchell refused to let her team be cast as the forgotten opponent. She seized the game and made it her own masterpiece. By the time it ended, conversations across the WNBA weren't about Aya Wilson anymore, they were about Kelsey Mitchell. Mitchell has long been respected as one of the league's top scorers, but too often, her name is mentioned behind bigger stars. Heading into the series, all the talk centered on Wilson's dominance, Jackie Young and Chelsea Gray's ability to overwhelm the Fever, or Indiana's chances of simply staying competitive. Hardly anyone expected Mitchell to be the one who would redefine the matchup. But just as she's done throughout her career, she silenced the doubt by letting her game do the talking. Her response to doubters was rooted in years of struggle. Mitchell revealed she once made a list of every reason she could have quit, every slight, every time she was overlooked, every coach who doubted her, every media outlet that ignored her, every critic who dismissed her. She carried that list with her, a reminder of the obstacles she had fought through. That, she said, was why she never gave up on herself, even when it felt like the world already had. On the floor, Mitchell's game was flawless. She scored in every way possible. Mid-range pull-ups when defenders chased her off screens. Deep threes when the Aces were a fraction late on their rotations. Drives to the basket when she found an opening. And at the free throw line, she was perfect, 6 for 6. By the end, she had poured in 34 points on 12 for 23 shooting, including 4 for 6 from beyond the arc. It wasn't just efficient, it was relentless. That 34-point explosion wasn't just impressive, it was historic. No Fever player had scored more than 30 points in a playoff game since 2012. No player in WNBA history had ever scored that many in their very first semifinal appearance. Mitchell not only matched the greats, she surpassed them, breaking the record set by icons like Lauren Jackson and Cynthia Cooper. Under the brightest lights, against the champions, and on the same night of Wilson's MVP coronation, Mitchell etched her name into history. Even Caitlin Clark, sidelined and unable to play, couldn't hold back her admiration. On social media, she summed it up with just 2 words: Kelsey, unreal. Short, simple, but powerful. It was respect from the league's rising phenom to the seasoned veteran who had carried Indiana through the fire. Even Aces head coach Becky Hammon admitted after the game that they had no answer for Mitchell. She acknowledged that her team failed to slow her down at all, a rare concession from a coach known for demanding excellence. That confession only underscored the magnitude of Mitchell's dominance. It wasn't luck, it wasn't a fluke. It was elite talent on full display. The symbolism of the night couldn't have been stronger.